This is Full Coffers with your host, Phil and Toni Buggs from Abundant Harvest Christian Fellowship Ministries.
And this week on Full Coffers, The Journey, Part 4. All right, last time we left you all, we were talking about the breakup.
The breakup.
But before we go back, we're going to take you back all the way to May 1981. Now, presently where I left you with the breakup, that was November 1981.
Correct.
But we're going to go back. We're going to kind of take you back in the novel. You know how sometimes when the character is going back in time and kind of bringing the reader up to speed, we're going to do that today. We're going to let you know what led up to a fateful day in November of 1981.
Correct.
All right. So the setting was a sunny day in Detroit, Michigan, in the parking lot of Northland Mall. For those of you from our Detroit days, you all know Northland was the place to be. And I remember we had driven out to the mall. We were just kind of going out, and we drove out to a mall. And we got ready to park in the parking lot. And Philip said, "Hey, do me a favor. I left something in the glove compartment. Can you kind of go in the glove compartment and get it out for me? It's a little blue bag." Mm-hmm. So, I'm just happy to be with him. So it was like, okay. So I go in the glove compartment. We were driving his parents' car. It was an Impala. What year was it?
75 Impala. It was a dark brown 4-door.
That was a tank. No seat belts. But we didn't need them because we wasn't going to get hurt in that thing.
No, you could probably shove about 5 bodies in the trunk of that thing.
And still have room.
Oh, Lord,
but it was the tank. It was a family car. So we were privileged to be able to use it. So anyway, I go in the glove compartment. I see this light blue paper bag. Yep. And I pull it out. And he says, "Take a look at it and get it out for me." So, I'm doing it. And when I opened the bag.
Did you have any clue?
Actually, I didn't. I opened the bag, and it was a ring box.
It was a ring box.
And I remember I threw it in because it surprised me. So I just opened it, and I just kind of threw it in the car. And when I opened the box, it was a little ring that had a garnet, which was my birthstone.
Correct.
And 2 little, probably cubic zirconias or something like that. But it was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. And that is when Philip and I became engaged officially.
Correct. That is when we became engaged. I actually got that from a jewelry store there at Northlands called Corey's Jewelry Box.
Yeah.
Obviously, it no longer is in existence, but it was within my budget.
Which was what?
$25. It was a step up above the Cracker Jack ring that came out of that. But it was affordable.
Yep. And it was odd. It was the perfect size.
Yeah.
It was
That's
the
right.
perfect size.
We didn't even have to rehab it.
Didn't measure it. It was the perfect size. And so I was just elated. I had hoped, but I never saw it coming, and that was just the greatest thing. We were finally engaged. You said the words, "Toni, will you marry me?"
Correct.
And again, I was just on cloud 9. It was just before my graduation, which was going to be the following month, and I was just on cloud 9 that rest of the day. And I think we went to Northland and walked around and got some cookies or something like that. But it was just
with her ring on.
Yeah, it was the perfect end to a perfect day. However, being that I was only 17
and I was 20.
20, yeah. There was one small thing we had to do. We had to tell
our
parents. We kind of left them out of the picture.
Yeah.
And, we couldn't get married legally until we were 18 and 21.
Right.
But
more you being 18.
Yeah. But, at the time, I didn't think I was going to make it to 18 after I told my mother. So we had to think about how on earth were we going to tell our parents.
And when.
Yes.
Timing was everything.
Everything. And if you knew our parents, you'd understand why.
Correct.
So we talked about it, and we decided that it was the month of May.
Yep.
And our little egotistical self said, what a wonderful
Mother's Day gift.
We stupid. We said, tell you what, I'm going to, if you can ask your mom if we could come over, my mother and I could come over for Mother's Day, and we'll just have dinner at your parents' house. And while everyone is there, we would spring it on them that we were engaged.
Correct.
So, we said, cool, yeah, we'll do that. And so, we did that. My mother agreed, which I was surprised, and Philip's mother was okay with it.
Right.
But when Mother's Day came, unfortunately, Philip's mom fell ill.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening, we had to scramble because, we didn't want to keep this a secret. We, in all fairness to them, we needed to let them know what our intentions were.
Before we let the church know.
Exactly.
Because we had planned to tell the church after we told our parents.
That's right. We were such good kids.
Weren't we?
So what ended up happening, Philip came over to my house for Mother's Day and had dinner with us. And we sat her down and we explained that we had decided to become engaged.
Correct.
Now, there was crickets afterwards. And my mother said, she took it a lot better than I thought she was. But she was insistent that I at least finish school, college.
Yep.
Because of course I was getting ready to go to university in the fall, or that summer, I should say. So, I agreed. Now, I have to let you all in on something. I had no intention on going to school another 4 years and then wait to get married. I've already been dating this guy 4 years. You think I'm going to 8 years? Are you crazy? But
the bad part was I was thinking 4 years. I says, okay, we're engaged. We could take our time and get everything set up. And this girl, she just kept it in her brain, but Toni never intended to wait until after college.
And we'll talk about that later. So, to appease my mother, said, oh, yeah, we're going to wait. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we got that off the ground. It didn't go so bad. So I'm feeling pretty confident here. I'm saying, okay, let's do this. So, of course, we've got to go and tell Philip's parents. And so not sure. It was shortly after Mother's Day. It was along the same week. It was less than a couple of weeks. So I came over to the house.
It was a Sunday.
Yeah, and both his parents were there.
Right.
And they happened to be in his parents' bedroom. Now, Philip could probably give you the setting of how the bedroom in a Detroit house went. And so I'll let you kind of describe what that scene was like.
Well, it was a bit awkward because it's like playing jump rope and you ain't got rhythm.
Yeah.
So you've got the time when to do this. And I'm trying to find the right time while Toni was over there. And nothing seemed to be a natural flow. And, hey, we've got some news to tell you. So,
and I think they kind of knew.
I believe they did. Something was up. So,
and I'll tell you a little secret also. I honestly believe, although it has never been confirmed, I honestly believe they thought we were going to tell them I'm pregnant. I mean, let me just be real with you.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah. I honestly believe that's what they thought because they I don't know, the looks on their face was like.
Let's build up to it. So there was no really right time. So I just decided, I said, Mom and Daddy, Toni and I have something to tell you. Boy, talk about subtle. So we go into my parents' bedroom. Mm-hmm. It's not highly important. I guess it is because my parents' because there was no escape route. Okay, it might have been 8 by 10. I think it was about that big, and they had a king size bed in there. And then they had dressers, so obviously there's not much room for 4 people to be in there talking about a matter that really was not on the top of their list.
And to be quite honest, I don't know why we were in their room because there was no one else home. Why couldn't we go in the living room where there's space, running area? Run. They did it on purpose.
But that way. So anyway, we get in the room, and my mother is sitting on the bed, and my father is standing over by the closet. And this would be like on the right side of the room, because as you open the door, the bed is on the left side, facing against the far wall, the pillows and stuff. So anyway, Toni and I are at the foot of the bed on the left side of the room, and Mom and Daddy are on the right side. Mom is sitting furthest away, and Daddy is over by the closet, which is just inside the room.
That war stance, the battle stance.
I honestly believe Daddy was probably the buffer to probably keep Mama from launching. So we're in the room, and everybody's situated as best they can. And so I decided to start off, and I says, Mom and Daddy, and whether the words were exact, I says, Toni and I wanted to, we have decided to get married. I think that's the way I turned it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And we wanted to let you know, but we also wanted to, I don't know if we said, hear what you had to say, but I think it was more so, we decided to get married, and we wanted to let you know.
Right.
I think that's the way
so
we
much
put it. Yeah.
We wanted your blessing.
No, I don't think we ever said that.
But we did say
know.
that we got engaged, that we were going to be married.
Right.
And we wanted to let you know. And there were literally crickets.
I think the crickets even stopped. I mean, it was dead quiet in the room.
Yes.
And then finally, I think I said, how do you...
No, I'm the one.
Oh, that's right.
My
bad, that's right.
I'm the one because the silence was just deafening. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I said to them, how do you all feel about this?
That's what, yeah.
And Mr. Buggs was standing up. Mrs. Buggs was on the bed, and her arms were folded. So for those of you who teach or have behavioral health, you know what body posture says.
Forget that. If you in a black family and your mama's sitting on that bed with her arms crossed, you know it's nothing good.
Yeah. So, I had to know. I just got to know. So when I asked both of them, but Mr. Buggs, being the man of the house, answered, and he says, "Well, I think it's just terrible." And honestly, if I could have slid out that window,
which was locked,
I mean, my heart just literally fell out of my mouth. I could not believe what I was hearing. And within a few seconds, I saw that smile on Mr. Buggs' face. And he said, "Toni, I'm just messing with you." And it was like, oh, thank you.
However, that wasn't quite the reaction my mother had. Because basically, not basically, I remember she says, "Well, it seems like you guys have made up your mind." Oh, Lord. It seems like you guys have made up your mind. So
why are you
why are you telling us?
Exactly. And I'm like, oh, no, this is not going well. And to put embers on the fire, my husband and all of his siblings were always very respectable for their parents. Yeah. I mean, there was no back talk. There was no, you do what your parents said do something, they did it. That's just the way it's been, always been. Great family.
I thought they could read minds. So I was afraid of even what I was thinking back then.
But for some reason, when Mrs. Buggs said, it looks like you're telling us what you're going to do, so why are you here? And Philip, I don't know why those words came out of his mouth.
But I did say, we're not asking your permission.
And I looked at him and said, are you crazy?
I think something just welled up in me, took over my vocal cords, and kept talking.
Who said that?
But there was a a confidence. No, there was a surety about what I knew I wanted to do. And it wasn't a matter of permission. It was that we were giving them the first
the respect,
and the first notice that we were going to get married. And truthfully, we wanted them to be happy for us, but that wasn't a prerequisite to us getting married. And I mean, I was 20, but I that's just the way I was back then. Still very respectful, but I was also determined to grow up and to have Toni as my wife, whatever that meant at 20 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make it clear that no, I didn't have everything figured out. I had very few things figured out. The two things I knew for sure was that I loved Toni, and the second thing I knew for sure, and this is where my faith comes in, I loved God even more. So those are the only two things I was sure of at this point in the relationship.
So needless to say, the meeting kind of ended abruptly after that statement. And then to put some color into it, my mother-in-law was a woman of strong faith, and I admire her to this day. She's gone on, but I've always admired her faith. But however, when I came into Philip's life, I could tell that she was concerned about me. For various reasons. And as a mother, I can understand it now. Of course, when you're a kid, you don't get it. But I can understand I'm younger than Philip, 3 years younger. And she was wondering or maybe a little concerned about the relationship. We were getting too close too soon.
Right.
Of course, yes, like I said before, I think they initially thought we were going to tell them that there was a grandbaby coming along. I'm sure they were quite relieved. But I believe Mrs. Buggs felt that, we were just going too far, too fast, too soon, and was fearful of the future. And as a mother of older children now, I get where she was coming from.
Correct.
But, I kind of... It hasn't always been roses with my mother-in-law, but...
So we got through that.
Yeah, we did. We did.
Let the church know, and that was interesting in by itself because when we made the announcement in the church, morning worship service announcements, and did we write it?
We wrote it out and gave it to the announcement clerk.
Yep, because you got, again, for those of you who grew up in the Black Baptist Church, announcements, if you had something to say, you gave it to the usher, and the usher would give it to the clerk who would read it at the appropriate time. So anyway, that announcement was made, I think, the last one. Yeah. And of course, the church almost erupted because...
Exactly. They saw us grow up. But I want to go back just a little bit, just slightly. After we made the announcement to our parents in May, I went and I got engaged. I graduated from high school in June, and then went, like I said before, I went to U of M summer school, and I would be coming home on weekends. There was one weekend in September that close friends of ours got married.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah, and it was a beautiful, beautiful wedding. They got married in September of 81. And as I was sitting in that and watching that wonderful wedding...
Never give Toni time to think.
This is a bad thing.
Oh, Lord.
But in all of that, I recognized that, okay, we are engaged. Now, this is in September of 81. But we really never talked about when we would get married. We're past that engagement thing now. This is September.
I think I'm in the clear for a while.
Thinking, hey, we need to figure out, when we're going to get married because I need to get this thing going. So after our friends got married and I'm just all in wedding bliss, Philip and I were walking home because it wasn't that far from the church. And I said, Philip, why are we waiting? Yeah, that's what I heard.
Because the bus doesn't run on Saturdays.
I'm like, what are we waiting for? Why don't we get married next year? What are we waiting for?
And we did talk about that.
We were on the street, on the That's corner, true. Woodrow Wilson and Pilgrim.
So tell her what we decided to do.
Well, after we had this great debate, because he was being logical and saying, well, first of all, I need to get a job, a career. I need to be able to take care of us. And I said, yeah, I get all that. But when are we going to get married? As you can see, I'm very determined.
And I'm not feeling pressure, am I? So
what we decided to do, in all seriousness, Philip says, look, we need to really ask the Lord what it is that he wants us to do. So
Correct.
He says, tell you what, let's just pray and ask the Lord when we should get married or when he would want us to get married. And, I had to agree, because that was the way we should do this. It shouldn't be something either one of us are doing haphazardly. It's a serious matter. So after a few days, we saw each other again.
I think that what it was, we actually went out to
Kmart to get my typewriter.
To get your typewriter. Exactly right.
Typewriter.
So we took the bus out there.
Exactly.
And we were coming back after buying the typewriter, and we're at the bus stop.
Right. And we had that
conversation.
Talked
about it.
Yeah.
So we now talk about it, and we say, well, we prayed last night. What did the Lord tell you?
Like Santa Claus.
And I told her, says, Toni, the Lord told me 1984. 1984. And I'm all happy and everything. So, it's 1981. So we said, okay, 3 years, we can do this. And Toni looks at me with the straightest face.
And I would say what I was thinking, but this is a family show, so I won't do. But let's just say the Lord didn't tell me 1984. I said, Philip, I prayed in all earnest, and the Lord said 1982.
Next year.
So you're going to have to go back and get you some more.
So obviously we're at an impasse.
Right.
Because we got a 2-year gap here.
Yeah.
You're saying next year. I'm saying 2 years from now.
Right.
Or 3 years from now. All that said, and this is late August.
Yeah. Actually, no, it's September.
It is September, because that's right. You would.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all that said, the relationship started to take a turn downward.
Exactly.
Because there was this tension about when we were going to get married.
Right.
And I think this is what brought us up to where we were at the last week, where Toni says she couldn't take the pressure anymore, the tension and the uncertainness. And in Toni's mind, instead of dealing with that, she'd rather just cut it off, go cold turkey, it ain't going to work, let's just break this off. And that's where she left me in November of 81.
Right.
Well, I was still sitting up here hoping to get into this program called Focus Hope's Machinist Training Program. I had passed all these tests during the summer, but they hadn't made the final decision. Well, Toni, you called me or told me you wanted to break it off.
Yeah, I had been first semester of fall in college, already starting off the block on a wrong foot in terms of academics.
Right.
And the uncertainty of that, compounded with the uncertainty of our future, it was a little bit too much for me to take. And so I didn't want to end school because I know I needed an education. So the only thing that I could let go is you and I.
Yeah.
I was of the mind that if I break this off, no more dealing with Philip having to go back home and all this other stuff that we had endured the last 3.5 years, I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I called Philip on a Tuesday, Wednesday night or whatever, and I just basically said, you know what, this is not working out for me anymore, and we need to call it quits. And I really didn't give him much time to talk. I guess he was just thrown off. He really didn't have a whole lot to say.
And she just said, well, that's about it.
Yeah.
She says, okay.
Yeah.
And she hung up.
Exactly.
And I hung up. And my brain started racing because I had known that God had told me Toni would be my wife. But at this point, I'm saying, Lord, I'm starting to almost question.
Yeah.
And I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, you told me she was going to be my wife. And he said, yeah, I told you. I said, oh, you didn't tell her?
I kind of had this ring on my finger, but
But God said, I told you. Who were you going to believe, me or Toni? Now, I'm not going to step out of my faith, but obviously you could look at the camera and say, okay, what's going on here? I'm actually going to believe God over this woman. And it made sense for the first time. I shouldn't say first time, but another time where my faith had to override everything else that I was seeing.
Right.
And so this is what I did in my faith-driven mind. The next day I had classes. And
well,
it was,
let me
sure?
I'm going to interject for 1 second. When I woke up the next morning, there was a sense of relief. And I'm thinking, okay, I do hurt. Don't get me wrong. You just don't get over someone just like that. But I woke up with a sense of new relief. I even made it to my 8 o'clock class. I had determined that I'm going to steer this ship back in the right direction with my academics. And I woke up, I went to my 8 o'clock class, and that day, I think it was a Wednesday, my classes went from 8 to 11. And I went to my classes. I really poured myself into it. Again, my heart's broken, but I determined that I've got to make this thing work. I don't have anything else. I've got to make my education work.
So Toni's in school, and she's doing her thing. And I had a class at Wayne County Community College that morning at 8 or 9 o'clock as well. I, at that time, was using my father's beat-up Sports Fury. We call it the Batmobile because that's what it looked like. And I didn't go to class that morning. I went from my home straight up 96 to, I forgot what freeway, but I took it all the way up to U of M. And I knew where Toni's dorm was. And so I got up there about 10:30, quarter to 11, and I sat in the lobby of her dorm. And all this time I'm driving up there, I don't know what I'm going to say. I have no clue, but I knew I wanted to say or had to say something. And so Toni came in, and perhaps I'll switch it over to you.
Yeah. It was a little after 11, finished my last class, and I came into the dorm, and the mailboxes were on the right-hand side, and so I went to look to see if I had any mail or my roommate had any mail. And so I went in, and I saw someone in the corner of my left eye, but, I didn't pay any attention. So when I'm looking in the mailbox, getting stuff out, and I closed the mailbox, and all of a sudden, something came over me and said, turn around. Mm-hmm. And I turned around, and look who was sitting in the lobby. I mean, on the one hand, my heart was just, oh, he's here. On the other hand, it's like, crap, he's here.
I'm not stalking. That isn't it.
No.
Though it could be perceived that way.
In today's vernacular, he's a stalker, but no.
But
no.
I had a proposition for Toni. And did we go?
Yeah,
we went to
other people were coming in
right.
for lunch at 11 o'clock, and
right.
I didn't want to, not that there would have been a scene, but I said, okay, my roommate's still at class. Let's
right.
go upstairs to my dorm room, and let's,
yep.
What do you got to say?
Exactly
why
right.
are you here?
And the words that came out of my mouth, just like they did when I told my mother I wasn't asking your permission. Before I could think about what I was going to say, I know that it was the Spirit of the Lord that spoke through me and said, I want you to marry me 2 months after I get out of my program. Yes, that's about the silence there was.
Right.
Because in my brain, I'm saying, hold on. You haven't even been accepted into the program yet. But my faith overshadowed what I saw and what seemed to be reality.
Right.
And and Toni, I'm not sure how you responded to it.
Initially, I was like, I've heard this before. I was like, I cannot deal with false promises.
Sure.
And, we've we had jumped out the gate a couple of times, and I guess I just didn't want to do this anymore. But then there was also something that was different about you, in that there was a determination, an assertiveness that I had not seen the prior, times that we talked about marriage and things like that. And so this dude not only said what year, what month, but he said what date. And I was like, dang, maybe I don't know. It was just different this time.
And I know that we're drawing to the close of this episode, but I am going to give you a glimpse into what the outcome of this was. I mean, obviously you can tell that. But I got a letter in the mail that I was accepted into the program on November 30th of 1981. We finished the program August the 9th, 1982. Toni and I were married October 9th, 1982. Now, I'm just going to let that sit in for a little while. For those of you who like just tossing luck up in the air and chance, and it just happened to work out that way, yes, you could believe that. But I am confident, based upon the outcome of my faith in God and what He told me to do, that He was the one who guided us into marriage, October 9th, 1982.
And what a wonderful thing that two people can experience. The marriage, the wedding was great, but even more so is that God understood what our desires were to be married. We could have went the other route where, couples get on birth control, do what you got to do, and, move on. But that was never what our hearts wanted.
No.
Our hearts wanted to be married and do things the way God had intended for us to do.
Exactly. That's the way we were brought up. That is what we understood Scripture to honor and to honor. And we wanted to honor God as we wanted to be a couple to commit ourselves to each other and to Him in marriage. So that is how we got to marriage October 9th, 1982.
Exactly.
The next episode, we will talk about what happened after marriage. I'm not sure how far we're going to light speed through it because we've been married for quite a while.
Right.
And I think we're going to slow walk it, but I don't think, no.
Well, there's certain things that I think we want to talk about that made big impacts in our lives. And I also know that would possibly help someone that may be going through that as well. So we just want to end this on the celebration of 5 o'clock p.m. in Detroit, Michigan at 12th Street Missionary Baptist Church. Philip and Toni Buggs said, I do.
Correct. Yes. And that was a great time.
Yes,
we might talk a little bit about that wedding, just a little bit, because for two po kids,
we pulled it off, boy. I tell you.
Yeah. We turned that church out.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was a great thing. But in the next episode, we're going to continue our journey as a married couple. Now. Wow.
Okay.
Excellent. This episode was produced and edited by Miss K. Simone. Cover graphics by Indefinite. Music by Miss K. Simone. So until next time, I'm Phil Buggs.
And I'm Toni Buggs.
Wishing you a wonderful week.